So today I'm going to be reading a book called Lazarus. It's part of I don't even know if it's part of anything. It's a mystery novel. Well, more like a thriller novel than anything. I've already read a bit of it, up to like chapter 7, I think. I think it's alright. Anyways, it's called A Killer Instinct Novel, Lazarus, by Lars Kepler. Um, there's a lot of cuss words, descriptive imagery, I guess is kind of descriptive. Dead bodies and how, and like what they look like, this and that. Um, from what I read, there was a sex scene, so, if you're not really into that, and you don't really have to listen. Let's get into it. Prologue. The light of a white sky reveals the world in all its cruelty, the way it must have appeared to Lazarus outside the tomb. The ribbed metal floor is vibrating beneath the priest's feet. He clings to the railing with one hand and tries to maintain his balance with his walking stick in the other. The gray sea is billowing like a tint canvas. The ferry is being drawn along the two steel cables stretched beneath the island. Between the islands. They rise, dripping out of the water in front of the boat and sink back down behind it. The ferrymaster breaks as foaming waves swell up and gangplank extends with a clatter to the concrete jetty. The priest stumbles slightly, then the prow bumps the jetty. The jolt reverberates through the hull. He's here to visit the retired church warden, Erland Lind, who didn't show up for the Advent service in Lana Church, as he usually does. Erland lives in the priest's cottage behind the Hog Marshall Chapel. He suffers from dementia, but he still gets paid to cut the grass and salt the driveway in the AC weather. The priest walks along the winding gravel path, his face turning numb in the cold. There is no one in sight, but just before he reaches the chapel, he hears a shriek of a lake from the dry dock down in the boatyard. He can no longer remember the Bible quote he tweeted that morning. He had been thinking of repeating it to Erling. Against the backdrop of a flat farmland and the strip of a forest, the white chapel almost looks as if it's made of snow. Because the church is shut for the winter, the priest walks directly into the small cottage and knocks on the door with his stick. Waits, then goes inside. Erland? There is no home. There is no one home. He stamps his shoes and looks around. The kitchen is a mess. The priest gets out the bag of cinnamon buns he brought and puts it down on the table, next to the foil tray with leftover mashed potatoes, dried up gravy, and 2 great meatballs. A lake down by the shore fell silent. The priest goes outside. He tries the door to the chapel, then looks into the unlocked garage. There is a muddy shovel and a black plastic bucket full of rusting rat trap on the floor. He uses his stick to lift the plastic covering of a snowblower, but stops when he hears a distant moaning sound. He goes back outside and walks over the ruins of the old crematorium on the edge of the forest. The oven and the sooty stumps of its chimney stick up from the tall weeds. The priest walks around a stack of wooden pallets. He can't help looking over his shoulder. He had an ominous feeling ever since he boarded the ferry. Nothing reassuring about the light today. He hears an odd moaning again, closer. It sounds like a calf trapped in a box. He stops and stands still. Everything is quiet. His breath steams from his mouth. Behind the composite heap there is a patch of muddy, trodden ground. A bag of mulch leans against the tree. The priest walks towards it, but stops when he reaches a half-meter long metal pipe sticking out of the ground. Perhaps it marks the property's boundary. Leaning on his stick, he looks up at the forest and sees a path covered with a pine needle and cones. The wind is whistling through the treetops, and a solitary crow calls in the distance. The priest turns around and hears a strange moaning sound behind him. He picks up his pace. He passes the crematorium and cottage. He glances over his shoulder. All he wants right now is to get back to his vicarage and sit down in front of the fire with a glass of whiskey. End of the prologue.